Hi there, it's Lisa from Lisa's Creative Corner. I am so excited because today I get to jump back into the world of scrapbooking for a little while I show you how to make a layout with a ton of photos on it. My layout's going to have 16 photos, but you can add as many as you like. I'm going to be scrapbooking this layout from Jayma as part of a collaboration with some other designers as we celebrate Jayma's 20,000 YouTube subscribers. We've each chosen one of Jayma's layouts to scrap lift and give it our own twist. And what better way to celebrate Jayma than to scrapbook some photos with her? About 5 or 6 years ago, Jayma contacted me and asked me if I wanted to be part of a new design team that she was creating. And of course, I jumped at the chance to work with Jayma because she was just the sweetest thing ever. And so I joined the creative design team way back then, and we did YouTube collaborations for about a year or so. And then I had to take a step back to focus on my kids that needed some extra time from me at that point. But I do still join them once in a while as a guest designer. So the creative design team actually came down to my neck of the woods a few weeks ago. They took a little trip to San Diego, and Jayma contacted me to see if I might want to join them. So I did join them for one day where we went to San Diego and we took a ferry from Coronado over to downtown and went out to dinner, and we had some fun adventures along the way, and that is what I'm going to scrapbook. One of the neat things that Jayma did on her layout was that she used one of Stampin' Up's card kits, and I thought that was just brilliant, and I thought about it and had the perfect card kit in mind that I had in my stash that I would use for my layout. This card kit is called City Sites, and I think it's going to work perfectly with my photos. It has this little stamp set that you can see right here with the buildings, which I think is just perfect for the downtown photos that I have. So my photos have two sort of themes going on. We've got the downtown skyline, but there's also this beachy vibe that I wanted to pull in as well. So I pulled out my Country Woods Designer Series paper and thought maybe I could use a couple pieces in here to go along with the boardwalk and some of the beachy water-themed pictures. So I'm just kind of laying out all of the different patterns that I have here, and I'm going to pull in my photos and just kind of see which ones might coordinate best. So I have this bright sky that doesn't really go with any of the papers, but this dark blue sort of goes with the ferry sign and the side of the boat and the evening sky in that one photo. And I think this brown one looks nice with the boardwalk. I think that one's going to work well. And I really like this piece right here. I don't know if it's going to go well or if it's just too busy, but I like the fact that it's light enough that I can stamp on it, and I think it'd be kind of cool to stamp that skyline in a navy blue. So I think I'm going to go ahead and use these three pieces. I don't know if that lighter piece is too busy to use for a whole background, so I think I might set it aside for a second and focus on this other paper packet. This is a retired DSP pack from Stampin' Up called Take to the Sky. I really like these tags, and I like the colors. I think the colors coordinate well with the City Sites card kit that I'm going to use. So I'm just kind of going through to see, ooh, this blue might work. I like the blue, and I like the copper clay on the right side there. I think that copper clay might be a good accent color because I don't want to have too much blue. And I love these airplanes. I know there weren't a ton of airplanes, although we did take a long walk to the restaurant and we did walk by the airport, so maybe we should throw in a few airplanes. Maybe I can use these clouds on the top too. So I'm going to pull out a few of these, and I'm going to kind of go through and see which ones I think might work. And I think maybe I should just hold these up to the wood grain papers that I pulled out as well and see if they coordinate at all. Let's see. I think they might work. I don't know about the clouds, maybe. Let's try it out. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start out with 2 pieces of 12 by 12 white cardstock as my base. And if you look at Jayma's layout, she's got the nice patterned border on the top and bottom from the cards, but then she's got this beautiful pink border around her photos. So I think I'm actually going to use this Night of Navy cardstock for the border around my photos as a sort of a nice mat. So she's got them sort of on the outside with a little bit of white border on the inside. And I'm not sure, that might work. So, okay, so now I'm going to use this wood grain. I think I'm going to use the wood grain on the top and the bottom because I really want to stamp that skyline on that in the Night of Navy ink. So let's see if I do that. What if I use these clouds? No, I think that's too busy and the blue just doesn't quite go. Okay, we're going to nix that. So maybe we'll go ahead and use this same pattern on the top and the bottom, and maybe I will just do a little bit thicker on the bottom so that I can stamp that skyline and then use, yeah, so Jayma, you can see here she's got a little bit thicker on the bottom as well and a little bit thinner on the top. I went ahead and cut a couple of strips of that DSP to about 2¼ inches by 12 inches. So I think I'm going to go ahead and use that on the bottom. And then on the top, maybe I'll do it about 1 inch shorter and do like 1¼ inch by 12. So I went ahead and I removed the Night of Navy cardstock just to see what this would look like. And I think it might work with this little skyline stamp stamped all the way across. So I went ahead and stamped it all the way across in the Night of Navy ink, and I think it actually looks pretty good. It's kind of cool with that background. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to adhere anything down yet. I'm going to lay all my pieces down first. This is kind of how I do my process because I'm afraid to commit by adhering anything just in case I want to make some changes. So there's this new bundle that's coming out in the new 2025-2026 annual catalog called Sunrise Sailing. And it's one of those 3D embossing folders that it's like a hybrid embossing folder. Although I think that boat's a little bit too big, but the dies that coordinate with it have these really cool waves. And I think I'm going to cut some waves out of that blue wood grain cardstock and maybe put it at the very bottom so it looks like it's the bay in front of the skyline. So I went ahead and cut 4 of those waves from that blue wood grain cardstock, and unfortunately it's not 12 inches long, so I had to cut 4 of them. So there will be a little bit of a seam, but hopefully you won't be able to see it and it will just blend right in. So I think I'm going to go ahead and put it right at the very bottom so that, yeah, I think that looks kind of cool. It reminds me a little bit of when we were on the ferry going across the bay and we saw the skyline in the distance. And so I think this is going to be perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and just lay these down for now, and then later on I will go ahead and cut them and adhere them. And then I'm going to put the smaller strips out of that same DSP up at the top, and then I also cut some really thin strips, like 1/8 of an inch or so, out of that same blue DSP that I used to cut the waves out of, and I think that kind of gives it a little bit of an anchor. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that Night of Navy cardstock down again to put my photos on, and I'm looking again to see how Jayma did it, and she had it, like I said before, where it wasn't butted up in the center. She had a little bit of a border in the center so that you could see some of the white, but I'm kind of thinking that it might look a little bit better if I butt them up against each other. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put my photos down, just kind of lay them down and see how busy it looks, and see if it looks better this way or see if it looks better if I push those pieces of cardstock together in the center. So while I'm laying these photos out, I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about our day. So I met the gals in Coronado, which is on the opposite side of the city, and you can take a ferry across from Coronado to the city, which is what we did. And if you see that picture right in the center where Katie is, She's sort of doing a selfie with me in the background where I'm waving. I had just gotten to Coronado and they were waiting for me, and Jayma said, "We gotta hurry, we gotta go catch the ferry." So here we are running down the dock to try to catch the ferry, and Katie goes, "Smile or wave." And so there I am waving. It was kind of funny. So we're running to catch the ferry, and as soon as we got up to the ferry, I noticed that the captain was a friend of mine. My friend Emil happened to be the captain that day, and so we chatted, and it was kind of fun to know who was captaining us, if that's how you say it, if he was piloting the boat. So we took the ferry across, and so some of these photos are all of us on the ferry, and it was a little bit windy, so it was kind of funny. We took so many photos so that our hair, one of us always had hair in our face or in our mouth or in our eyes. So I did the best I could with printing out the photos where you could see most of our faces. So you can see on some of these photos, I'm placing photos on top of each other, and that's because I'm going to be using flip flaps, and I'll show you how to use those later on. So I have a little bin here with all kinds of little embellishments that I gathered. There's some natural tone linen that I think would match. This little piece is, actually I have two of them, that is from the card kit. And I need to figure out, do I want to put them in the corners or what? So I'm going to just kind of lay out some of these pieces again without adhering anything down first. Just to kind of see where I want to put these embellishments. I die cut a couple of these little sailboats from the Sunrise Sailing Bundle, and I did a small one. Actually, I think I did two small ones and a larger one. And on the base, I used that darker wood grain DSP, and then I used a little bit of the copper clay cardstock for the sails. And here's a couple of the little ones. And I think I'm going to go ahead, I'll put one down here on the bottom. Not quite sure if I even want to use that third one, so I'm going to go ahead and just set that aside for now. And I cut some of those tags from that retired Take to Sky DSP, and I just love that one with the little compass rose on the bottom. It actually matches Erin's gorgeous hair perfectly. I just love this color. So now I just need to figure out, where do I want to put these tags? You know, maybe what I might do is maybe I will take this picture of Erin and Janice on the right side and stick it on, maybe I will just put it in a flip flap and put it behind this other picture of Janice and me in front of the Star of India, which, by the way, the Star of India is a beautiful ship. I need to figure out what I'm going to do in that upper left corner. I think I want to do a little cluster of something. I think the title, I'm going to put the title in that corner, but I also want to have just a small cluster of something. So that little corrugated banner shape is a piece that came in the City Sites card kit. And I think I might make a couple other little banner shapes in that upper left corner to do a little cluster. And then this little piece on the right that I'm tucking the tags behind, that's another piece from the City Sites card kit. And I stamped that same city image on, and so I think maybe I'll make a little pocket out of that and put the tags behind it. So I'm just kind of playing around with some colors here. That other piece, that lighter blue piece in the upper left corner, that is another one of the tags that came on that cut apart sheet. Maybe what I should do is figure out the title first. I've got the little tags in that upper right corner, but I think if I figure out the title, then I can kind of work around the title and create a cluster that will fit in nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and use this die set called Alphabet a la Mode from Stampin' Up. And because the letters are so thin, I'm going to put a piece of adhesive sheet on the back of the cardstock before I die cut the letters out. That way it'll make it much easier to adhere to my layout. So I've got my letters all cut out, and they are super, super thin, a little bit hard to handle. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to kind of lay them out and see how it fits in this little area. I honestly don't even know if the whole title is going to fit. I thought maybe I could put San Diego and then the word fun sort of overlapping that photo of all of us underneath it. And I'll tell you a little funny thing about that photo. So after we got off of the ferry, so we took the ferry from Coronado to downtown San Diego, Jayma had made reservations at a restaurant that we were going to walk to. The restaurant was called Sea Level, and she had checked it on the map, but I don't think any of us realized actually how far away it was from the ferry landing. So we thought, well, we'll just start walking and see how long it takes. Well, it ended up being 3 miles from the ferry landing, so it took us an hour to walk there. But honestly, it was the nicest walk. It was so beautiful. The weather was fantastic. And of course, the company and the conversation was awesome. I got to catch up with almost everybody, and we walked all the way down. We walked on, right on the water, and we walked past the San Diego airport. And so that picture of all of us is just about, oh gosh, maybe 45 or 50 minutes into our walk. We were just about to see the restaurant in view, and James said, we got to get a picture of this. We've got to document this. And of course, my hair is hilarious from all the sea air. So that was a little picture just before we got to the restaurant after our long walk. So you can see I'm laying these letters out here, and there's just no way they're going to fit. The word fun is just too big to fit here. So maybe what I'll do is maybe I will just use the fun over here. It looks like it might actually fit perfectly on this little tag. So, okay, so we'll leave the word fun over there for now, but I still want to put something under the word San Diego. And I did find this die that is an old Close to My Heart die, and it's called Best Wishes. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the word friends, and so I'm going to put San Diego and then put the word friends underneath it. And I'll die cut it out of a piece of basic beige cardstock. Now the basic beige cardstock actually matches those little circles with the skyline in it, and the little piece where I stamped the skyline underneath the little tags. So that'll tie in that color. So actually I kind of like that because it brings in another, like a little scripty font underneath it, and I think that looks a lot better. So let's go ahead and keep that as our title, but I do think I want to push these pieces of Night of Navy cardstock together. I think that's going to anchor the photos a little bit better. So let's go ahead and do that, and it gives us a little more breathing room on the outsides. It gives me a little more negative space because this is a really busy layout. So while Jayma has that nice opening in the middle, I just don't know that it works for my layout. So I'm going to cram those little pieces of cardstock together in the center, and I think that that looks a little bit better to me. So okay, so I think we have the very basic layout down. So I'm gonna go ahead and adhere these down, and then I'm gonna figure out afterwards how to embellish everything. Okay, so now I have all of my photos adhered down, and I have the top and the bottom borders adhered down. And these photos right here that I'm going to set aside are the ones that are going to go in my flip-flaps at the very end. And the flip-flaps are the key ingredient on how to add tons and tons of photos to your layouts. And I can't wait to show those to you. Now I'm going to work on this little pocket that I wanted to create in this upper right corner to put the tags in. So I have this little die cut that is from the City Sites card making kit, and to make it a pocket I'm going to add these little foam adhesive strips to the bottom and to the two sides. Now I love these strips because they are very, very thin, so they're a little bit easier to use when you need a long strip and you don't want it too big. A little bit easier to use than the dimensionals, and you can cut them to whatever length that you need. So I'm going to just pull one of them off, and then I'm going to flip over the die cut, and I'm going to go ahead and add a piece on the bottom, and then I'll just snip it off, and then I'll add a little bit on the sides, and I'm going to try to get it as close to the edge as I can, because that way it'll leave more room for the pocket portion so that I have a little more room to put the tags in. And before I adhere it down to my actual layout, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place it down just to make sure that's what I want, because these are pretty sticky, this adhesive, and once you put it down it's really hard to pull back up. So I'm just going to set it there and see if it works, and I think it's perfect. I think the dimension is just high enough so that I can put the tags in and easily pull them out. Okay, now that I know that I for sure want to put the tags in this upper right corner, I'm going to go ahead and add those letters that I had originally die cut to go on the title, the word fun, that didn't quite fit for the title. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere these directly to this tag. And again, because these letters are so thin, I added a little piece of an adhesive sheet on the back of the cardstock before I ran it through my die cut machine. So it makes it so much easier. I don't have to put adhesive on the back and get glue and all of that stuff everywhere because they're so thin. So I'm just using my take your pick tool to pull the adhesive off the back, and I'm going to go ahead and adhere the letters to the tag. Now that I've got the letters on the tag, I am going to go ahead and punch the holes in the tag and add the thread through the top. So once I put the thread through the top, I noticed that I cut them a little bit too long, so I'm just going to trim them a little bit, and I'll go ahead and do that with my snips. And I think that this color is perfect. I like having the copper clay as the accent color, and it was nice that I had the thread that matched. So I'm really liking this upper right corner, but it's got a little bit, it needs a little texture, I think. So I'm going to add a little stamping to the background before I adhere the pocket to that upper right corner. And I should have done this, I should have thought about this before I adhered everything down, but since that Night of Navy cardstock is already adhered to the white cardstock, I'm just going to put a couple pieces of Post-it over the white just in case I get a little bit of stamping that goes off the edge. And so I'm just going to go ahead and stamp this little pattern that came in the City Sites card making kit, and it just gives it a very, very subtle texture in the background. So I think that's going to work. Although now I feel like I need to add a little bit of texture to that upper left corner where the title's going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'll just stamp the Night of Navy cardstock with that pattern in the Night of Navy ink. And this is the perfect way to add just a very, very subtle texture to something where you have the coordinating ink on the coordinating cardstock. Okay, now I'm going to shift my attention to that upper left corner where the title's going to go. So I'm just going to lay out the title die cut letters really quickly while I try to figure out what to do in that upper left corner where I wanted to create some sort of a cluster. So I went ahead and trimmed a couple of pieces from those tags that I had cut out earlier, and I'm going to trim the ends into a little banner shape to coordinate with that corrugated banner that came from the City Sites card making kit. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to adhere my title now. I think that little cluster works up in that left corner. I am going to add a few more embellishments to it. But I went ahead and I'm going to adhere the title and then the friends, and I have the little tiny dot that goes above the eye. That one's a little bit tricky, but I managed to get that on there. And then I have these little birds that I die cut too that also came from the Sunrise Sailing Bundle. I added a couple of them on the right side by the tags, and then I'm going to put one on the left side by the title. And I found this Sweet Thoughts, Memories, and More pack in my stash. And there's a couple of stickers in here that I think might actually work on this layout. They're sort of like a rose gold color, which I think will coordinate nicely with the copper clay cardstock. So I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of those stickers in the upper left corner to help build up that cluster a little bit. And I also, I don't know if you noticed, I did add one of those little airplanes by the title as well. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to keep it there or if I'm going to move it, but I'm going to put some dimensionals on the back and just kind of let it sit there for a minute before I actually commit to putting it on my layout. So now I think I'm ready to adhere that little pocket. So I'm going to take off the protective coating on that adhesive, and I'm going to go ahead and stick it directly to the layout and press it down, and I think it is going to work. Yes, now I have a little pocket. Okay, so those little birds that I die cut that I mentioned earlier, I'm going to go ahead and adhere those down. I think they add just a nice little touch to the dark cardstock background. It's a nice contrast. Now I'm going to go ahead and focus on that lower right corner, and I have that circle piece that I was going to tuck behind the Night of Navy cardstock, but I forgot about it and I had already adhered the cardstock down. So instead, I'm going to go ahead and cut that circle a little bit so that it actually looks like it's tucked behind it, but it's actually not. So I think I'm going to go ahead and stamp that little pattern image on it to give it a little bit more texture. And now I'm going to take another piece of that tag that I had cut earlier and do some more banners, kind of like I did in the upper left corner, and add those to the lower right corner. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere that little round die cut to that lower corner, and I'm going to adhere these little banner pieces that I cut just above it. And I think I'm going to go ahead, I want to use that larger sailboat that I die cut, but I need to remember that I'm going to put a flip flap there over that picture. So I need to make sure that when I adhere that down, it doesn't interfere with the flip flap, or it doesn't get covered up by the flip flap, I should say. Okay, so I think that'll work. Now let's go ahead and focus on the left side, and I think I'm going to go ahead and adhere that little tiny sailboat in the lower left corner. So now I'm going to add just a few more embellishments, and these little copper metallic embellishments were also in the City Sites card kit. So I'm just going to add a few of those to tie in that copper accent color. And I do think I'm going to add a couple of the tiny planes that I die cut out of the DSP. So I'm going to add one here to the tag, and then I think I'm going to go ahead and add one to that title on the left side. I do have some bigger ones, but I don't want a focus to be on the airplanes because it was more sailboats. Although we did, like I mentioned, walk past the San Diego airport, so I think planes are appropriate. Now we get to do the fun part and add the extra photos with these wonderful flip flaps. So I went ahead and I put my layouts into the page protectors, and we're going to add these flip flaps on top of the page protectors. Now these are 4x6 flip flaps, and Stampin' Up! Carries various sizes, and when you get a package you get horizontal and vertical. So I decided that I wanted to use a horizontal flip flap on top of this photo. So I went ahead and folded it over, and I'm going to stick my photo inside. And I always like to put the photo inside first before I attach it to my page protector, because then you can line it up perfectly on top of the photo below it. Now I'm going to remove the protective coating over the adhesive, and I like to make sure that it's folded over so that it hides that little piece when it's closed. And I'm going to stick it right on top of the photo that's below it, on top of the page protector. And I'm going to press down nice and firmly, and I like to use either my fingernail or a bone folder to just make sure that it's on there nice and snug. So now you can see you can lift it up and you can add more photos here, but I'm actually going to add my journaling there. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the right page, and I'm going to use another 4x6 flip flap and do the same thing. I'm going to add a photo, and then I'm going to remove that adhesive strip and place it right on top of that photo of Chelsea and me toasting each other. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the 3x4 flip flaps. Now I'm going to use one vertical flip flap and I'm going to use one horizontal flip flap. The nice thing about these is you can use either direction. So if you want it to open up and down or left and right, you have a lot of flexibility. So I'm going to do this one where it opens up and down. And then the one to the right with the picture of me with Janice, I'm going to have that one open to the right. Now that I have my flip flaps attached, I'm going to go ahead and add even more photos. So I'm going to add, like I mentioned before, I'm going to add journaling here. So you can see I added my journaling right there. And on the 3 flip flaps on the right page, I added another photo. So this one I added another photo of the fairy, and this one I added a picture of my delicious dinner. It was so good. And then this one I added another picture of Jayma and Chelsea. I hope you enjoyed watching the process as to how I create layouts with multiple photos, and I hope it inspires you to do the same. And I also wanted to thank Jayma for inviting me to participate in this collaboration to help celebrate her big milestone. I'll put a link down below to Jayma's original video that inspired me to create my layout, in addition to a link to all of the participants of this collaboration. I'll also put links down below to all of the supplies that I've used on my project. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye!